Good evening. Make sure we are good to go and everything is all set here and posted, and I will get going. It's, you know, tonight's topic about complexity versus simplicity in technology. And part of this came about when I was thinking about why people choose a particular ecosystem. So, one of the things that came to mind was there's then this discussion going around talking about how YouTube has, how not YouTube, Samsung has improved their ecosystem, and Google, this rumor of the Pixel Watch and maybe a Pixel Fold and a Pixel tablet type device coming out. And I think that when we talk about this technology, that one of the things that comes to mind that differentiates the two, and I don't know that it necessarily makes one better than the other, but I think it makes one more of an easier choice for some consumers than the other, is the simplicity when it comes to the technology. So, what I mean by that is, let's say I'm someone and I have a smartphone and I'm looking at expanding and I want to buy a tablet, or I want to buy a laptop, or I want to buy a smart box for my TV, or whatever, whatever you pick. And so I have a product, I have a smartphone, um, whether it's a S22 Ultra, an iPhone, Z Flip 3, Pixel, my Pixel's over there on the charger, that as a consumer, the decision comes down to, and it doesn't even have to do with the device that I started off with. A lot of people think, well, maybe you chose an iPhone and so you want a simpler ecosystem because you like a simpler device. You don't want the the ability to do some of the tinkering like you can do with your Android device. So that's what you like about an iPhone. But that's not necessarily the case, because you may have somebody who has an iPhone because that's the device that they've always used. They use iMessage with people, and maybe they use a Windows machine and they want to buy a tablet and they want to know what's the best tablet to use that will allow them to use it along with their Windows machine. And so you get into things like second screen technology, and you get into am I going to buy a Samsung tablet? Or you have a tablet and I'm going to buy a laptop. What is it going to be? Um, and so this made me think, good evening, Barry. This made me think about why we make the choices with technology that we do. And it made me really break down and think about the idea between the differentiation between kind of Apple's ecosystem and other ecosystems. And I really think what it boils down to a lot of times is not necessarily what's better, and sometimes not even what might be better for you, but good evening, Lewis. Kimmy, hi. Um, but what's easier? Because when you get and you sit down and you go to set up a device and you start going and you make start signing in and you realize, you know what, I need to create all these accounts. So let's say you have a Samsung phone, but you're using all Google stuff and you don't want to set up a Samsung account. So then you get into sitting down to set up a laptop or a PC or whatever, and it's like, do I need to log into all the Samsung stuff for stuff to sync across? And so that, I think, buying decisions for some people, And as techies and as content creators, I think that sometimes then somebody says, what device should I get? I'm coming from this device to this device. You should ask them not only like maybe not think about the device that they're coming from necessarily, but are there things that they didn't like about that device? Are there reasons why? For example, just because somebody says I'm an iPhone user and I'm looking at buying an Android device doesn't necessarily mean that you recommend a Pixel, because maybe that user didn't like the simplicity. Maybe that user wants more out of the device than a Pixel can give. Maybe that user wants something as simple as a Pixel, but wants to be able to have the ability to, wire connect up and output. So then you're having to recommend something like maybe a Motorola, or I would say a OnePlus, or even like an LG back in the day, and still today I would recommend some LG devices. Um, so when I was thinking about buying choices and I was thinking about ecosystems and I was thinking about this, that's kind of what came to mind. And so when you guys are making purchasing decisions, how big of a deal is ease of setup when it comes to buying a device? I mean, I already know that some of the answers, like, for example, I know that Gigi, when she's buying devices that are imports, there might be some complexity. There might even be things like having to install the Google Play Store. And so, tinkering that that's expected, but a lot of people have done the work. But once that's done, it's a matter of signing into Google accounts. And, with Huawei devices, I know that Huawei has their own accounts. But I'm just curious about, is ease of setup a factor for you in determining what you're going to buy, whether or not maybe you're going to look at, you've been an Android user and you're going to look at buying an iPhone? The idea of like, okay, I got all my stuff set up. How difficult is it for me to sign into my Google and have all my contacts sync over? And I think that that's something that came to mind, and it really made me think about. Um, I know there are videos out there, but I don't think they're focused right, and I don't think they're titled right, that point out the idea of, if you're setting up an iPhone coming from Android, informing people that they can toggle on contact, calendar, and all this synchronization from their Gmail account on their iPhone, and then all of that stuff will just sync up and show up in their contacts. And there's ways to do this. Whereas like the opposite doesn't hold true. You'd have to go set up a Gmail account on your iPhone if you don't have one, if you've been using iCloud Mail and iCloud account and Apple Photos and syncing stuff like that all the time. You would have to go create a Google account and set everything up and get it to sync. And so I think that the motivation and some things that push people away from testing other devices or from buying particular product and it might even be the product that's better for them to use, would be how easy or how difficult it is to change sides. For example, I know there are people that have said they don't care whether it's Windows or Mac OS, but they weren't sure about how, about connecting their Android device up to their Mac. How easy is it? How difficult is it? And it's one of those things like, well, I use Android file transfer utility. And so that's the question. Barry says, I'm a techie, so setup has zero impact on me. However, I always say that it's extremely easy right now. Yes. But one of the other things that kind of sparked to mind was, I've been using my Galaxy Book Pro 360, and I remember when I first set that up and how kind of annoyed I was because they said, oh, it's as easy to set up as a smartphone, but then it was like I had to sign into every individual Samsung application because they don't treat it like an iPhone where, you're signing into a Samsung device, and so when you load up every Samsung app, it just signs in kind of automatically for you. It's all pre-signed in. because it's running Windows, the permissions, like Samsung didn't really go in and set up their permissions as well to do that. And so when I set it up, it was tricky, and I don't know if that's changed since then. Are the new ones a little bit better when it comes to that? And then some of the other things that came to mind were the idea of, for example, I don't really intend on this being this way, but like the ecosystems that I've used. For example, when I bought my iMac, all I had to do was sign in with my Apple ID, and then as sort of part of the process, you toggle on FaceTime and iMessage, and you say, okay, allow those to sync from this phone number. Pop-ups come in, it guides you through it, and when you're done, everything's just there. But I didn't have to like sign in individually into all these things. I don't have to make sure Bluetooth is on. I don't even have to be on the same network. As a matter of fact, now my iPhone doesn't even have to be on, and all my messages will come through. Text will send through. But on the other hand, when I was setting up my Samsung devices, having to go in and know to toggle on the whole like remote connect for my watch, which means if I'm using the Wi-Fi hotspot in my car or on another Wi-Fi network and my phone is, let's say, here, or if I wanted to, I could even pair it to my iPhone's hotspot, leave my Samsung phone at home, and my messages would sync up that way. That's just something that's extra. It wasn't something that I was guided through as part of the setup process. And I feel like that can be an extremely important and beneficial kind of feedback that maybe we can give to these companies, and that we can also, when we're talking about setup and we're giving tips and tricks videos about when we buy a device, okay, how easy was it to set up? Did I have to sign into a bunch of things? Did I have to go into settings? Did I have to go change things to make it feel the way that it just should out of the box? And I feel like that's the discussion that I don't know a lot of us talk about. I know that I've seen tons of videos about, make your Samsung device faster, and there's some channels that every time a new Samsung device comes out, they basically do the same video, and it's showing developer options. But the whole why behind that, kind of, I don't understand why people don't express why it's important to turn those things on, or even frustrations in why you should have to. Why shouldn't it just be set up to be the fastest, smoothest experience out of the box? And I feel like that's kind of a discussion that maybe is something that would be important. And I even think that it would be an interesting point of conversation amongst a group of people. And keep in mind, this is all from my experience, my opinion on things, and everybody has like their different use cases. And some people, it's, well, I'm not, why do I care, about being able to have my phone in a different room or at home or not on Wi-Fi, And to me, it was just, there were some frustrations of when using the Your Phone app, which they've now called something else. I can't remember what it's called now. Yes, you did. Hello. That the idea that if I don't want my stuff coming through, that even when I disconnected Bluetooth, because it was paired through the network, and even when I like tried to turn on Do Not Disturb on my phone, that the stuff still synced up, because that stuff just doesn't connect through the same. It doesn't work through the same. And I would love to see a way that basically you just sign into a Google account and all your stuff is through that way. Just like how you can access your Google Photos online. You don't have to have an app on your computer. You can just sign in, photos.google.com, and you can access from anything. Access your Gmail, access your photos, your contacts. It would be really nice if Samsung or, any manufacturer, any OEM would develop a laptop that you just sign in like that. And I know that there's Chromebooks, and maybe that's partly why. I think that leads to the discussion of how Samsung and Google kind of get in each other's way. Hi, Jason. It's been throwing me off seeing a different name, your different name on Twitter. Um, so I think this leads to a whole discussion of preference, of course, and differentiation in like what makes an ecosystem and what pushes some people away from one and what pushes people away from the other. And then some people like don't realize that they're in an ecosystem, don't realize that they're using the benefits of certain things, even as far as like they use Gmail on their iPhone, and maybe they use Google Docs, and or they use like the Microsoft suite. Some people are in a Microsoft ecosystem, um, even if they're using an Android, an iPhone, an Android tablet, and Windows PC or something, using Microsoft 365 to connect to this. Even the fact that Samsung has incorporated that into their new um, into their new into their monitors in the last couple of years has become an interesting thing. Let's see. Days One says, yeah, Samsung trying to provide service outside of Google, and that becomes an issue. If everyone was Tizen phone, laptop, watch, I think everything could work well together. That's true too. Like if Samsung's gonna work outside of it, they need to completely work outside of it, and they don't need to be like, oh yeah, we're gonna borrow some stuff from Google, but then not entirely do that. And one thing that's become a problem with is that um, even though I have Google set as my passwords manager, Samsung Pass still wants to take over, and so I have to every once in a while. It's like I'll go to sign in on a website or a new app or something, and I'll have to go grab my iPhone or like sign in on my computer or sign in Chrome and go find the password for it because it doesn't pop up and do the autofill, and that's just kind of annoying. And I think Samsung, because they want you to do everything through them, because that it benefits them. It's information, it's data, it's you utilizing their stuff so that when you switch, you're kind of stuck. In a way, they're creating this walled garden, and they contradict themselves sometimes, and so it's interesting just talking about this. And I know I can sound real ranty or complainy or whatever you want to call it. That's not really a word, but I think that we all would benefit from understanding when, like, the problem is Android and the complexity. Like, Apple's benefit is they're the default, but you can use other stuff. And you can use like other password managers, and when something pops up, you just click like the share sheet and you fill it. But like Samsung just makes it difficult, and then there isn't like a built-in way where like Apple has Keychain. So you have to have Chrome and you have to go into Chrome. And then Samsung has in their internet browser as like their default. And so then you install Chrome and you use, or maybe it's already there, but you use Chrome, and then you have to go in and you have to sign in, and you have to remember your password for that maybe, and go in and grab the password. And there's no like asking like the key phrase, hey, what's my password for Amazon or whatever, and having Google Assistant respond, as far as I know. Where like with my iPhone, I can ask Siri and have that happen. And so like this again, talking about efficiency and simplicity in the way that we use our devices. Jason says, I don't really do ecosystem. I use what I consider the best provider of service that I need to in the aspects. I'm all over the place. Yeah, I sort of do that too, except for I also kind of cross-platform in that I use Google Storage, Google Drive, Google Photos, but I also use Apple storage in photos, and that's for redundancy, but also then it doesn't really matter what device I'm on. And, I can sign into my iCloud to get the stuff from photos that were taken on my iPhone. And of course, those will sync up to Google Photos when I go in and sync those up. And that leads to a whole other discussion with how Google Photos is handled differently. And it's kind of Apple's problem, but it's also kind of Google's problem. Um, Days One says, I pretty much use Google services across Android devices and Windows. Even have my Google chat messages come to both phones, so no matter what phone I'm using, I still get messages. Yeah, I at one point was doing that with Google Voice. Um, let's see. But now, like, then carriers have their own ways of doing things now, and that's another whole mess that I can get, that we could kind of rabbit hole into with this whole thing of simplicity as well. For example, RCS, right? So RCS is great, and pretty much all the carriers are supporting it, but there's still that simplicity, right? For example, I had times where when I moved and I came here and set up new network and all that stuff, I had to go in and toggle on the chat function again. Bixby has ways to unlock things with a voice password. Well, they used to. I don't use it anymore. But that's what you mean. Oh no, I understand that. What I meant was like being able to ask like Google or whatever what your password is, and it pops up, and then it authenticates. Like for example, on my iPhone it uses Face ID, or like on my Mac I can ask Siri and then use my fingerprint, and on like my iPad it's the same way. The idea of Tech 11 Mama says I use Samsung Knox and Google Password for autofill and such. Yeah, I wish I can't get Google autofill to work. For some reason, Samsung Password always wants to come up, even though I've set the default to Google Password. So if anybody knows like a way to force that around or bypass that, that'd be great. It wasn't a problem with my old devices, but then when I got my S22 Ultra, so that's one of the things, like Jason says here, that's why iMessage will always win, because you don't have to worry about turning it on. Google needs better implementation. With the exception of when I got my iMac, or when I got my iPad, apparently for some reason when I set it up, it didn't set up as the whole when you go into the settings and you can select which device to have everything forward to. It didn't it for some reason it didn't toggle on. But usually by default when you're setting things up, it asks you and you click yes, and I think I just didn't and I swiped it away, and so that's a security thing. But what I was going to say is when we get into this whole discussion of things and how this all works, there's the whole auto sync and redundancy and all of this, but the problem really comes to RCS is another instance in which when we try to compare that and we try to say, well, Apple should use that, here's the problem. Apple didn't create it. So Apple created iMessage in a way of trying to push this, and they wanted a unified protocol just like Lightning, and then people complain about it now. But so the problem right here, yes, iMessage and RCS is that one is tied to an account and the other is tied to a number provided by a carrier. Exactly. So it doesn't matter with iMessage what. Well, there's an exception to that because the SMS factor of it is still, and that's part of the problem. So yes, if I'm sending an iMessage and it's strictly an iMessage, that can be sent to and tied to an email address, whatever I chose, my Gmail. I have a .me, I have a .iCloud. Yes, I have a .me, an @me.com address because I've been around for that long with Apple stuff. But so that's what I feel like is a problem. So it's carrier bound, it's carrier restricted, and just like so many other things, OEMs aren't pushing back. Google is, this huge company with all this data and all this power and all this money, and Samsung is the same thing, and they control all these devices, but they've refused to say to the carriers, no, you can't install Facebook. No, you can't install Netflix. No, you can't install Verizon Messages Plus or AT&T apps or T-Mobile apps, or you can't even pop up and ask, and have people just click to the next thing because they're auto-checked. They don't do any of that. And then it causes problems because in reality, if somebody really wanted to, they could create a spoof app. And this is when we get into like security issues potentially, where somebody creates an app that's similar named and they could possibly trick it to install during the setup phase. But fortunately, most of those, how those work is when you put in the SIM card, then that goes out and basically it resets and it tells it to go to and grab a utility that in that utility is the specified. But anyways, this creates a struggle when it comes to really, I would love to see the implementation of this stuff, and I would love to see it be simple, and I would love to see it be, I set up my phone, and you know what, it's using Android, so I sign into my Google account, and because I've done that, then when I go set up my Android tablet, and I go set up my computer, and I sign into Chrome, and I install a Google Messages app on my Windows machine or my Mac, because Google could do this. They could. Integration through their servers, and it wouldn't even have to necessarily be through their servers, because there's a way for you to be able to create your own server on your Mac and get iMessages over on a Windows machine and an Android device. So we know that this could happen, and Google could do this. And why they're not doing it, I don't know of all the other projects they do, and they kill off things and they create random things. And there's a new one today about a new name for something with Google that they've already been doing for a while, and now they have a new name for it. But why they don't create a way where you just sign in to your Google account on your Mac, on your Windows machine, and all your messages just sync up through, just like I sign in to my Apple ID and my iMessages come through and my photos come through. They do that. There is a synchronization app where you can do that to sync your photos, and you can specify like a specific folder and put all those photos in there to sync up to Google. They do that with everything else, but not messages. And they could do it with two-factor authentication, and they could do it where it's encrypted, and they could do it with all this stuff. And we've seen like Apple has Private Relay, and they have all this security stuff, and Samsung has Knox. Samsung could do it. They could say, you know what, you have a Samsung phone, but you are using an iPad, just install our app on your iPad and sign into your Samsung account, and your messages will sync up. See, Google has messages for web, and they could just use that method, but create an app so that you're not having to sign in to like Safari or Chrome or whatever and have that load up every time. Just use an app, and you use the same QR code to sync everything through. You sign in once, it grants the permission, it's good to go. And then on your phone, if you decide, oh shoot, I signed in on a computer, I don't want to have permission anymore, that pop-up is there, you get rid of permissions. Hi Sharky. So the concepts are there. It's like they're 99.9% complete, but it's that 0.01% that 1%, 0.01% that isn't there yet, that I think keeps some people from using certain things, and it pushes them away. And then they see other people sit down and go, and like, for example, I'm sitting there and I have my iPhone and my Mac is going ding. So I know that I had a message because my iPhone was on vibrate. Now, if I muted that on my Mac, it wouldn't happen. But like the idea that I can just pick up any device because it's signed in and it works. And it wasn't difficult to set up. I didn't have to sign into 15 different accounts. I didn't have to go and toggle on a bunch of settings. It asked me, it guided me through it. Like, technology should be easy to use. And it's kind of like the idea of, if you buy let's see, Charles, if y'all were in a store setting up people's devices and they had to deal with two-factor, you would not want to use it. People blow up because they can't remember and they get locked out. Yeah, that's a problem too. But even then, like, it's not really using it for the essence of, like, it sends a notification to your phone and you use your Face ID to scan in, and then bam, now I've set it up on another, it's using another device. I don't have to remember some PIN. I don't have to remember some, I just give it permission. YouTube has that where it pops up and okay, what 2-digit number, and there's 3 sets of them. You click the one that it shows. These things are already in place, but it's just not using it for the things that they really could be using it for. And so I push for people to kind of question and kind of want this. Like, do you not want to be able to use your devices seamlessly together? Do you not want to not necessarily have to grab your phone? Or, like, I understand, like, being bothered by it, but I feel like, well, it's there. And let's see, for Samsung to do what you're saying, like Apple, you can, when you sign into your Samsung account from activation, it asks if you want to restore from backup on another device. Then all settings and such are mostly there. Yes, yep. I get that. Like, when you're setting up a new device, you can just sign in. You can sign in with your Samsung account. You can sign in with your Google account and restore all this. What I mean more so is, like, for your messages to sync across, because there isn't just a message app unless you're using unless you're using Samsung Messages. And now they have integrated pretty well with, like, I can use Google Messages on my Samsung phone, and then and it will sync through to my watch, and then you can use Samsung Messages on, like, a tablet, and things will sync up as well, and you still get, like, people get the read notifications and things in there. So I feel like that's, like, they're one step away. They're just so close. I want to try 2-step authentication with a physical key and leave the authenticator app. Yeah, there are some good ones out there. I know, also, if you have, like, a Pixel, you can use it as a security key. I use Google Authenticator, but, like, most of my stuff has their own authentication. My bank has its own way of authenticating that's, like, location based and all this complexity. It's more than just, like, sending a PIN to my phone. It's location based, and yeah, that's the problem. Don't do with tech on the people who don't do the tech on the daily don't. That's the pain point. If you have a broken screen or don't have other device to get the code are up a creek. Yeah, that's the problem with with the 2-factor authentication. Usually there's, like, an alternate thing though on the new device. You can say, like, to send an email, and then you can go and sign into your email on another device and get to it. Of course, if your email has two-factor authentication that goes back to that original device, then that can create it. But usually there's a way around it. Um, yeah, I've known some people to have had some problems. Some people that are very, very tech savvy that had problems because they got locked out of, and then that was their backup for another account, which was then, it was like account A and B were linked together, but account A was the backup for B and B was the backup for A, and so it creates a problem. And I think that that's the thing with this is like people need to understand what they're doing, and I think that's also why, like, for example, Apple has a two-factor authentication thing, but the thing is, like, if it's sending it to my Mac, but I have have my iPad with me and I don't have my MacBook with me, I can go on my iPad and I can request the pin there so that it pops up there. It pops up like the map, and it pops up the thing saying, hey, do you want to give permission? I click OK. I put in password. It creates a pin and all that. That's part of the interesting thing, like seeing the different ways stuff handle it. So Dave said I did two-step authentication, then changed my number and forgot to turn it off before that. Well, that was the end of that account. Didn't have backups. Yes, yep. Hi there, Trell. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. I'm just gonna go for probably a little bit longer on this. I hope you all are enjoying the conversation. Of course, if you're new here, please subscribe, and if you haven't, hit that thumbs up button. And don't forget, everybody, after this, at 9 o'clock over on Easy Computer Solutions is Wired Wednesday with the group over there. And I will be heading over there roughly after this. That's why. And so when it comes to like the security, the privacy, and all that, I think that's part of it too, like understanding the ease of setup on the device, but like the ease of use of that, the ease of recovery, understanding, like, the companies need to be better at understanding when they prompt you to do these things that you really know that if you set something up a certain way and you lose access, you're stuck. And so, for example, if all of my Apple devices were destroyed in a fire and then I went and bought new devices, I would have a problem getting things set up, because what devices are going to authenticate? It's going to try to authenticate to an old device. So basically, I would have to create new accounts, transfer everything over, and so that might create a problem. And that's the problem, like, in theory, when everything's on all your devices, and unless you have... So I've actually thought about, like, buying an older iPhone and just having it set up simply with all my stuff synced up. I make sure all my passwords are synced up. I turn it on like once a month, make sure all the passwords are updated, turn it off, have it in a lockbox somewhere just for that purpose. Brad Pitt hair. Yeah, I need to get a haircut. Having moved, it's interesting finding a barber, and I have cowlicks, so it's not exactly easy to handle. But I think that Charles says, bingo, that is the thing they need to change, at least be able to call and unlock. Yeah, but part of it is like they don't is for security purposes, a lot of these companies make it device side, and so because it's just strictly device side, there's no way to recover it. If you lose the device, you lose access. If you don't have another way to access the account, if you don't have it set up for multiple device to access, if there's no way, like, oh, it's set up to an email address, so all I have to do is sign it. But then if your email is, yes, I'm still in Michigan, just a different part, like 20 miles north of where I was before. So technically more centrally Michigan located, I guess. Anyways, that's, I think, the problem, like, with the simplicity versus complexity discussion is some things are very made so easy to set up that people set them up and don't understand the repercussions of when they do that and when they enable certain things to protect their security, that they can make it more difficult for themselves down the road if something were to happen. Hey Eric, how's it going? Just getting ready to wrap up. Looking forward to the conversation over on your stream after this. So I think these are things that we just all need to really think about when it comes to our technology, what we enjoy about it, when we set things up, how we set it up, what accounts we sign into. Is there a unified way of storing things? Is there a unified method of syncing these things up? Is there a protocol in place? Do you have something in place so that if something were to happen to your devices, all of your stuff is in line? I could do a show on NPR, probably. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Dave said if security is gone, then it might be good enough even for you to get back into it if something goes wrong. Yeah, NPR is National Public Radio. Family Life Radio is another one. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to say thanks to everybody who came on by. Thanks to Barry. And Tech for Your Needs, Gigi, Days One, Jason C., Charles Monroe, Latrell, Easy for coming on by and showing your support, everybody. And that's so true. Everybody on NPR talks so smoothly. I hope you all have a good rest of your evening. Head on over, take the train on over to Easy Street. Head on over to Easy Computer Solutions for Wired Wednesday. I'll see you all in the chat, and I will see you all in my next live stream, which most likely will be probably next Sunday. If not, oh no, Sunday was going to be Easter. So I'll see you all next Wednesday, and let's head on over. Get yourself some popcorn, get yourself something to drink, and thanks everybody. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Don't forget to thumbs up on your way out. If you're watching this in replay, let me know. Replay crew, #replay crew, and comment down below your thoughts. Thanks everybody.